I'll call the North Smithfield School Committee and Town Council joint meeting to order of March 15th, 2022. Clerk, please call the roll. Present.
Here. Here.
Here. And I will also open the meeting, the annual joint meeting, North Smithfield Town Council with the North Smithfield School Committee, March 15th, 2022. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here. Here. Madam Clerk, will you please lead us with the prayer and the pledge, please? Oh, also, if everybody could keep the residents of Ukraine in your mind tonight as we have a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chairman, do you have a preference as to which one of us you'd like to run the meeting this evening? It's up to you. Whoever your guest.
I'd be honored if you could run the meeting tonight.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I'd like to thank the members of the school committee and Mr. St. Jean for inviting us in as your guest here tonight. I'd also like to thank Mr. Corvo for organizing this. He's the one that got this going. According to Rhode Island state law, Title 16, Chapter 97, this is required by the state to have an annual meeting between the council and the school committee. So, good job, Mr. Corvo. We're going to have open forum. What I would like to do is I'd like to give everybody plenty of time to say whatever they want to say, whatever's on your mind. And also, not typical for a council meeting, we don't usually, well, we're not on Zoom anymore, but is there anybody on Zoom that would like to be heard during open forum? Please put your hand up and we'll figure out how long we're going to give at that point, how much time we're going to allot.
I have it running here on my other screen. I can
Okay.
see all the hands and
Oh, you
if
have
anyone's
hands?
indicating. So right now, I don't see anybody at this moment.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to be heard during open forum tonight? Wow, that was easy.
Yeah. So, Mr. President, may I just give an opening statement? So I want to thank you, members of the council, for meeting with us tonight. I want to lead off by saying that over the last 6 years, school committee, town council, town administrator have all worked together to make the school department better. And that makes us a better town. If you just, and I'll just talk about this briefly. If you just look at the buildings in the school and the beautiful track and field, we could not have revamped the schools without your support. Anytime we ask for funding, you listen, and we're very fair in balancing the schools in the town. When the taxpayers voted to expand North Smithfield Elementary School, we did so efficiently and also provided a state-of-the-art labs and lockers in the high school. We also worked together on putting new windows in the high school. When the pandemic hit, we were prepared with technology and Chromebooks to help hit the ground running. These are just a few things we worked together on, and we are all better for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember back in 2016, we made a commitment that the school committee and the town council would work together. That continued. Mr. Vadney was
Correct.
was the president and continues today. Would like to lead us off. So what I'd like to do is keep this semi-formal, just engage in conversation. Of course, there'll have to be, rules that we have to follow as far as who can speak and one at a time. But I'd like to keep it semi-formal, and we could probably get through the meeting a lot easier and a lot quicker that way. All right. Scott, you want to lead us off? If you have any.
Sure. And I appreciate the school committees providing us with a draft copy of the budget plan for 2022 and 2023. I guess as the council had mentioned, in the past when we had gone over the previous budget last year, one of the things that came out of it is we said, okay, this upcoming year, we don't want any surprises with the budget in light of the pandemic and everything that was provided as far as funding. So I thought it would be appropriate to first start off and ask point blank, is there anything in the budget that we should be made aware of that as a council we should be concerned of? And I say that because just last month, Laurelville had an article that was written stating that they were requesting about 800,000 for this upcoming budget in 2022, 2023. So, that was a little concerning of mine because last year, obviously, without shaking a stick, we had no problem providing you with the funds that you wanted. And so I'm a little concerned that we might be faced with something that is a lot higher than what was asked this previous year.
So Superintendent, do you want to answer that, or do you want Lisa to answer it? We can have.
Lisa loves it when I call her up to the podium. But you know what I'll do? I'll start off, and then at some point, I might ask her to come up there.
Okay.
So the areas that we're looking at to have the most concern about are the same things that you have. Inflation, increase in fuel prices. So we have submitted you a budget which was basically generated in November, reviewed in December, and since then, right now we have probably for this year 100,000 deficit in fuel prices that we're looking to make up from other places because we do pay the fuel for the gas for the buses along with propane and gas for the buildings. So the inflationary prices and fuel prices have become problematic. We don't anticipate that's going to change much next year. We hope it does. But again, this is something that we'll continue to work for to find efficiencies and bring it under control. The other thing that came up this year is we had underestimated the amount of students who were going to go to competing district and CTE programs. Now, here's the strange thing, and this is the other trend that we're having in the district, is that we're getting a much greater transiency, people moving in and out than we have before. So the increase in students going to CTE programs in other districts are largely from families that have moved into North Smithfield and are using the CTE program so their kids could go back to what used to be their home schools. But unfortunately, in that respect, we pay tuitions. So we pay their tuition to go back to Situate, to go back to Cumberland, to go back to another district that they moved to us from. Granted, there are some programs in other districts that we don't offer here. And so it gives students and families a chance to get high school programming at a public school that maybe isn't in our public school, North Smithfield. But having said that, we have as many new CTE students come to North Smithfield as we've had leave North Smithfield. So I hate to say it's a wash. I'd rather come out on the winning end and not the tying end of this. But we actually, for next year, anticipated freshmen. Mr. McGee, we have elected 12 applicants to come to North Smithfield High School for the 9th grade, which is the largest single class we've had. So again, what works in that case is now those districts are paying us tuition for the students to come in. So we were low in our estimating this year, but next year we're looking to increase it. And again, it can fluctuate. The other thing that fluctuates greatly is high-cost special education, where we have families with students who have such intense clinical, medical, psychological, social need that we need to send them to specialized programs. And, you know, we've done a really nice job of trying to bring high-need students back to their home school, back to us. We have a partnership with Bradley at the high school. Otherwise, we would be sending the students at the Bradley partnership out of district. But instead, we can keep them in their home school for far less money than if we had to send them out of district, and certainly with the transportation. So right now, we have 16 high-need special education students, and the 16 students with transportation and tuition, that's about $1 million. All right, so, and again, that can fluctuate wildly based on who moves into the district. We have 3 students right now who are medically fragile, and we have to provide a one-to-one nurse. So again, these are certain things that we try to anticipate, but it can just fluctuate wildly. What is disappointing is that in the budget proposal, we gave you 2 numbers because at the time, we did not know what the state aid to education would be and how they would calculate it. And so we gave a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. We based the budget on the worst case scenario, in which we would be requesting 3% from the town. The best case scenario would get us under 2%. What's actually come through is worse than the worst case scenario. All right, but we will work to make it up. The state aid to education, our allotment, at least it went up, but they lowered the increase by about 30 or 40,000. So we'll have to make that up. So the overall ask is a 3% to the town. And again, we're constantly working at, because we have to submit this so early in the year, we're constantly working at adjusting down to actual as we get updated healthcare and benefits costs, as we look at staffing and personnel needs. Again, we're just constantly trying to bring this down because we know that you as a town, people in the town, are faced with the same inflationary prices and things are going up, and you know there's only so much to go around. So that's what we look to control.
Mr. President, may I just add that, and that's 3% of our budget, not 3% of the overall budget to the
Right.
town
3%
budget.
of the local appropriation.
Yes.
Mr. St. Jean, when somebody leaves this district and goes to another district, they can't just go there because their friends go there. There
Sure
has
they
to be a
can.
reason. Doesn't there have to be a reason
No.
that they offer something that we don't offer?
Yeah, but then they just sign up for the thing that they offer.
Fine.
Can't say no.
What are the reasons that the kids are coming here? What seems to be,
Great music program. We have engineering. We have the business and finance. And to be honest, social. Whether they have friends or family here, whether they have social issues back in their home school and they need to go somewhere else. Athletics, that's another reason people go. I've spoken with parents and we always try. I mean, I spoke with one and talked about a science CTE. And, you know, I said, well, you know, we have these great science labs. We have these programs. They're not a CTE, but they're a pathway. We offer these things. We have all of this talent and equipment and access. And then I would be told, well, you know, the boyfriend is at that school. Or I would talk to some parents and what they would do is put their first choice, second choice, third choice. And it really is, I talked to one parent and this was a person who wanted to go to Pontiac. And the parent said, well, we want to do their business program. Oh, we have a business program. Oh, no, we want to do the animal science program. So I jokingly said to the chair one time that if we never got that track replaced, I mean, the field, we could turn it into animal grazing area and open up a CTE program in, in veterinarian sciences. But he really wanted the field in place, and so we got that going, and so, but yes, it is a free-for-all.
John, you finished?
Only public schools though, correct?
Only public.
Only when they transfer, not going to the mount or.
No,
Hurricane or
no.
Sound.
No,
They're
and-
on their own.
Yeah, in fact, and certainly during COVID, we've had a lot of parents who transferred their students back to North Smithfield High School because it's a highly rated high school in the state. It's at the top tier. And they're paying $20,000-$30,000 in tuition to go to one of the private schools. And they were on hybrid. They had the same setup that we had. And but I also spoke to a number of parents that decided, why are we paying all this money to send our kids to private and parochial schools when we have a great high school here? And so we had people come back.
So Howard, you have something?
Yeah, I have a few things. First of all, I apologize. This is divided. I've had 4 very serious dental surgeries, and I'm looking for more over the next month. I came here with a few things on my mind. First of all, I agree with you. I was going to say the same thing. I've been coming to school committee meetings for a long time and town council meetings. And the last three terms, we were first and foremost for children. There was no personal agenda, which is important. Number 2, right now, all this that you're saying is wonderful, but I am concerned. I see parents here, I see teachers here. Both have been greatly affected over these past 2 years. I'm more concerned for the psychological injury many children have gotten. Many children's parents worked in the health field. They were gone sometimes 2 days in a row, 16 hours a day. And when they came home, they tried to see, do as much as possible. But in my lifetime, and I think never did I think I'd see this, a world upheaval, both politically and then with this virus. I want you to make sure that we have a program to meet the needs, psychological needs of our children. Also, no one is going to tell me when you're in a classroom, and most teachers know that, you can tell by looking at a child who they get it, smiles or diversion, and you pick up on it. On Zoom, you don't. There's not the protocol. Sitting in your bed with a Zoom thing, eating, it's different. You need consistency. You don't get it. And it's just nothing against teachers. It's what we've had to endure. And funds must be there to fill in blanks if there's areas needed for the children. To give all the support to our classroom teachers, because they not only have a school family, they have their own family. And it had to be difficult, because I just had them during the day, but I could at least send them home at night. Here's the difference. I didn't have to be working and trying to hold my own family together. And people don't realize how difficult that had to have been. but money have to be kept aside. I don't know what we got for funds, but some of them must be used for that. And I feel at this time, if any teachers are so stressed out, we have to be there for them during this time. Because at the beginning, it seems to hit you as you go on. And as we go on, we'll see the weaknesses that this entire time has caused. And, you know, it's hard to get subs. And I want to stick this in at the same time. $100 a day, and I write about what that's what a sub gets paid.
We've made some adjustments and we're looking forward to addressing everything that you just brought up
Oh,
because it
I
is
hope so,
absolutely
Because I think
critical.
$14.30 in this day and age, people could make more being greeted at Walmart and not have all the responsibility. And that's a shame. That's an insult to the profession. And as I sit here, we have to. If children are dressed to play, they feel like playing. Dress codes must be enforced. And don't tell me, oh, it takes away from their self-expression. I went to a Catholic girls' school, and let me tell you, we express ourselves, uniforms or not. You're not in one 24 hours. So certain things we need continuity. Sometimes every case is different. You got to go with the flow. Was it immaturity? Was it sometimes it could be a little more mature? They know what they're doing. You know, this is the time for many of you. They're going through puberty. God knows what they think to do. So I'm relying upon, so far, I think teachers, principals have been very, very cooperative. Our nurses should have had well, my granddaughter worked for the school system where she was from. She graduated in Simmons nursing this I should say in a couple of months. And they hired her 5 days a week, 7 hours a day, so that the nurses wouldn't be here 7 and 8 o'clock at night, keeping up on everything. We have excellent nurses in this country. By far, they care, they go way beyond. And they don't count, well, how many extra hours am I doing? I called one person, it was like 8 o'clock, she didn't go home.
Mhm.
I called her husband, I said, did you get lost? And we joked about it. But I think if they had one person that kind of shared 3 days a week, someone to help, if you showed up, I think it's close. If I'm not, I apologize, but it still wasn't enough. This isn't normal time. In one program I'd love to see improve is our art program. I think we need more programs. I think we need more classes. I look at other public schools that do, and like my oldest granddaughter, she's a graphic artist, and it's because of their public school system. And they're in the hit Western Mass that they arrange with RISD, they got scholarships for kids.
Mhm.
And she ended up graduating from Maryland Institute and graphic artist in Chicago with her husband. So art is that to me, academically is a weakness. We must improve our art. People make their living, graphic artists, illustrators. We've had some good art teachers, but not enough variation of art courses. But again, I'm proud of the teachers, the way they care. And some I worry, but we had some classes, and I think North Smithfield had very supportive parents, and I think throughout this, we've learned to accept, not agree, and we change the way we disagree. I think it's, I hate to say humane, that's the only word that describes it. Constitutionally, we have a right to free speech, but it's the way you say it. It cannot be a personal attack. And I saw one person on your side, who I know and is very supportive of education, get clobbered. And I will accept that. And let me tell, I defend this person till the end. Mr. Connell, I see people here that have always been, and most of them, their children, yours will, Mr. Jones, don't worry, you get there, have gone through the system, and they've always been supportive to teachers. And that's a plus. The strength of a school system are the parents behind them. I believe that. I'll always believe that. But again, everyone's opinion must be respected and not attacked. So I'm glad you agreed with me on some of these things. North Smithfield is a very special place. And we have to keep it that way. That's all.
Mrs. St. Jean, if I can give you some advice, when Claire O'Hara speaks, you should listen.
I was tempted to move the camera and zoom in on you the entire time to capture that forever. Thank you.
Do you have any
Mr. Connell
comments
has-
about that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for being here and inviting us tonight. I just have two quick comments, I hope. Ms. O'Hara, just mentioned, you mentioned about the fillings. We have discussed this at our budget meetings on this, and we have applied for ESSER funds to provide some extra people to address some of those COVID-related needs. People who come in a little later, can stay a little later. I believe, when I understand that our ESSER 3 application was just approved. And if, just to clarify, you hear APRA, ESSER. APRA, obviously American Recovery Plan Act. ESSER is money targeted to schools right out of APRA. And the way we get it is by applying for the Department of Ed. So they granted us the first two, and they've just granted our third application, which is like ESSER 3. That's the end of the ESSER money, but from our meetings that we discussed, that'll give us some extra to add some of these things that Mr. O'Hara was saying, to fill in the blanks, like specifically extra people who may not be teachers, but might be counselors or supplementals to 2024. But to be clear, that's not part of, that can't be part of the budget. You know, you can't just use ESSER money to make our basic education plan, you know, to make that. So that's like, ESSER is a help, but it doesn't make us the fundamentals we have to bring forward pursuant to BEP. And Mr. President, you had mentioned, well, just everyone just mentioned the CTEs. One of the things that also we talked about at the budget meetings were the CTEs and where we lose students. And I think the approach that we're taking is to try and, the CTEs we're building are the ones we're good on. For example, as our superintendent mentioned, music. A lot of kids, half the kids in the school, sometimes more, participate in the music program. And pretty much a lot of the people in the room are probably aware of that. We've been to a concert at one
Very
point.
strong.
A school like Pontigansett, you hear a lot about. Pontigansett is a very strong, I mean, statewide, they're a very strong school with a lot of different type of vocational type of things. And the kind of, they actually have facilities there that we wouldn't have. So we're not trying to compete with Pontigansett as much as we're trying to develop the CTEs. We're trying to distinguish ourselves as opposed to compete with them. Of course, it's competition on a certain level, but we'd rather than try to build a program that's going to be bigger than Pontigansett's agricultural program, which is far ahead of everybody else's in the state. And I know this has been discussed throughout. This is an issue that we're not facing, it's all the schools are facing. What we're trying to do is develop, we're trying to develop CTEs and pathways that'll be attractive to students and things that we do well and just expand upon those. That's our kind of the basic philosophy at this time.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Something that Claire mentioned.
Mhm.
Substitutes, and I know you had a little more information on that.
Right.
But do you think that we're limiting ourselves, or you're limiting yourselves by the requirements of substitute teachers? Your request, the minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree to be a substitute teacher.
Associates, it depends.
Okay.
So what we've,
I only ask because, I don't mean to interrupt, but I only ask because there's a lot of people that don't go on to higher education, like insurance fields, plumbers, business owners, electricians, that might retire and have a lot to offer.
Right.
But we're kind of limiting ourselves by not accepting these people who might want to just work a few days a week as a
Yeah,
substitute teacher.
and we do, and one of the things that it became very difficult for every single district was the day-to-day subs. We also have, there's a statewide system in which jobs are divvied up for substitutes. So we're in competition with everybody else. Now, Providence, God bless them, they pay $250 a day for a substitute teacher,
How much?
$250. Okay? We can't approach that. Okay, so, but one of the things that we have done is moved away from the day-to-day subs, and now we have building subs. We pay them extra, and they're there 4 days a week. They're consistent. They know the kids, they know the teachers, and we have a good group at NSCS. They're there every day. We have a group at the middle school and a group at the high school. We do look for our building subs to have a bachelor's and preferably a certification, because when one of our teachers goes out long-term, this person can step in as a long-term sub. All right, so which is very difficult to fill. The other piece with our building subs is that they're part of our training, they're part of the staff, they're part of the team. They're vetted, we get to know them, and if they're truly excellent, as they become the more permanent person there, and a position opens up, they've already spent a year doing proof and vetting and kind of the interview. So since we switched over to doing building subs instead of day-to-day subs, and the building subs get 150 a day. 125, 125. Long-term sub gets 150. The quality of the people that we have filling in these long-term positions has just skyrocketed. So, I mean, one of the questions was about recruiting teachers. Honestly, we've never had a problem recruiting and retaining teachers here in North Smithfield. We will have an opening for an elementary position, and there will be 235 applicants for that one position. But we also now have building subs that have worked with us. We know them, they've proven themselves, and they can just sort of rise to the top. So sub coverage has been difficult with COVID, but has been much better since we adopted building subs. Now, if you want, I could ask Arnold to come up and talk about the ESSER 3 funds and all of those pieces that are built into it to sort of make up on academic gaps and help students social emotionally.
I was actually thrilled that we did get our approval yesterday, so when we came today, we said we're approved. So the ESSER 3 funds, so the ESSER funds is the Elementary and Secondary Education Relief Act, and it's specifically given to us or funding for districts and for school districts to support students from the last 2 years. And it's the social, emotional, mental health, the academic supports and close the gaps that occurred during COVID. Kind of drives me crazy. I can't prove that. All right. So in order to do our application, we first started out with surveys. And so we put surveys to teachers and staff and faculties, also our parents, and to really identify what are our priorities. And so we started out with our priorities, and we basically came up with 4 main priorities. We had 334 responses. 70% of those responses were from our parents. And our 4 priorities was the implementation of intervention and opportunities for support throughout the district that take place during the school day. And that was definitely a priority for our families and our teachers. implementation of after-school programs and academic interventions. So the same thing, but also after-school opportunities for academic interventions, provide additional mental health supports. And the last one was to continue to repair and improve school facilities that will also reduce the risk of virus transmission. So those were the 4 priorities that were given. And once we did the survey, I then went to each school improvement team. School improvement teams made up of teachers and parents, and at the high school, some students. So we had conversations, we reviewed the survey results, and then we came up with recommendations. And so that's where we started for our plan. So it wasn't just, me sitting in my office, although I would have loved to have done that, but it was really going to the school improvement teams and getting the information, saying, where are we and where do we want to go and how can we best support our students as we move forward. And so that's where we started. And the next phase was also analyzing the data and where are we academically, where are the gaps, where are the holes, and what do we need to fill in. And so from there, we wrote our plan. So the Department of Ed doesn't just give you a bucket of money. You have to apply for those funds, and they give you restrictions of what it should be spent for and so on. So it's like a 10-page document of how to apply for the funds. And so we did apply for the funds. I'll just say for ESSER 3, just really briefly, and I'll answer any questions, but briefly we applied, we didn't spend anything. We applied for the funds, and the funds, when we get them, will be, we'll have 2 full school years to spend money. And so we put funds towards 2 years worth of summer enrichment programs. We put funds for 2 years worth of tutoring programs in various models. Some families really wanted some after school traditional tutoring. Other families and students, it was when the students at the high school wanted different options, maybe a Zoom meeting at night at 7 o'clock at night after they've been home and had a break or had practice. Math intervention and supports, and that was a database decision to extend and refine the supports that we have in our district. And to really target certain grade levels. Instructional assistants, building-based substitutes, and Mr. St. Jean had mentioned them. We've had great success with them, where we pay for our building-based subs out of ESSER 2 from last year, and we've had great success. And so that's something we certainly want to keep. The other one is assistance counselors. And so we have allocated 2 assistant counselors, one for the student assistant counselors for the middle school and one for the high school, and for 2 years worth. The assistant counselor in the conversations and the development of it was really a teacher or counselor, because it could be a guidance certified person or it could be maybe even a health certified teacher when we developed the job description. But that is a person that would be above and beyond the guidance counselors. And we were initially thinking that that person would come in later and stay later. They'd have different hours than the teachers. They'd be available every single day after school. And it wouldn't just be for counseling support. Some of it would be counseling supports, but some of it could be running clubs and engagement supports. It could be community service. So we know that our students are hurting. We know that it has been hard, and there are gaps. There are gaps, 100%. And when we think about how we fill them, especially with the social emotional, we think of that that service that we can do by having some, and I'll explain, use one of our middle school clubs that we're doing this year. One of our teachers put a service project out to make bags for the club. What is it? Underprivileged children. And we had 50 of our students volunteer that want to be part of this club, and they're bringing in materials and supplies, and that was all paid for by a separate grant. But we have our students that want to come in. That's step one. Come in, become engaged. Because of that one teacher that was going to run this club, other teachers are coming to say, we'll help you, we'll come to do this, and it's going to be a service project. We want to do a lot more of that, and I think that is like a step in the right direction. So it's not just counseling after school, it's having some really good projects where students can be engaged and to help each other and help the community and help other communities. So we will be having, we did get the funding for the assistant counselors. We also have funding for professional development. There is a new law in Rhode Island that says all teachers K to 12 have to have some type of training in the science of reading, and depending on what you teach determines how much training you need. And so when you look at high school physics teacher, it's only 10 hours that you'd have to do, but if you are an elementary first grade teacher, it's I'm gonna say 80 hours of training. It's an enormous amount, and the trainings are very expensive. So we're putting a lot of the trainings in here. And although it's a heavy lift, it's a law that was passed. It's a heavy lift, and it's hard to manage the initiative. However, the training is excellent, and our teachers, although endure quite many hours of it, have learned a lot, and it will be something they will be able to apply in the classroom. And so that's very pricey and very expensive. We would have, as a district, had to pay for it no matter what, because that's what the law is. But we did put it in ESSER. Other things we put into our application was response to intervention training. So we have interventions and supports that we're paying for through ESSER, but we want to train all of our teachers into response to intervention, how they intervene within their classroom, that students don't necessarily need to go out to another teacher to get intervention, and what they're going to do in the classroom, because there are more gaps than ever due to COVID. And then we also wanted to balance our application with really helping our students for the here and now, and knowing that there are gaps. But we wanted to look at this and say, well, what would we be able to see 10, 15 years from now and say, well, that was some of the COVID funding, and we can still appreciate something that was purchased. And one of those was the windows at the high school. So we have started the Windows project. We're making great progress on that, or making progress on that. We'd like to continue the progress and do the high school cafeteria windows and put it into the ESSER 3. And it goes under the ESSER funding because it's ventilation and it's a healthy environment. And so we'd like to move forward on the windows project. The other one that came up was that isn't necessarily instructional is a high school digital or electronic sign. And that's something that has come up over the years at many different meetings, that folks in the community and parents and students would really like to have one of those fancy electronic digital signs outside of the high school. You can drive by and you can quickly see what's going on. And someone very quickly can just write a message on it, like, if there's an emergency or safety. Our students are the ones that brought it to my attention at the school improvement team meeting, and they were unbelievable. Our students are so fantastic, but their ideas were great, and they're the ones that brought it to my attention. I said, we've heard that many times before. We haven't been able to do it because it's never something that we have the funds to do, but I put it in the application. I did get feedback. It was sent back to us, and they wanted more information. They wanted some research, which I like to research. I was like, oh, I'll give you research. So we researched the heck out of it, sent it back, and it was approved. So we do have funds for the digital side, which I was thrilled about, because it has been something that's been talked about. So beyond ESSER, I did want to talk a little bit about the supports, because mental health is so incredibly important, and we know that, and we see it every day. And we really want to provide the supports to our students that are struggling. And so we have supports within our district, and we want to use them wisely. And so just want to share some of that information. Is that a good time to do that? And so we have just a variety of supports in place to assist students, and obviously we plan to use ESSER funds to extend and refine those supports. Our schools have access to psychologists, social workers, guidance counselors, teachers, certified health teachers, and we provide assistance to students that are experiencing abuse, neglect, a death of a family member, mental illness. And also assistance with things like students just struggling with relationships or problem solving or anxiety. Students who had maybe struggled prior to the pandemic, that had maybe a little bit of anxiety, the pandemic has exacerbated everything. And so although we have systems of supports in place, we do need more. And that's why we wanted to put into the ESSER funding. It's in in addition to what we have and work in tandem with our social worker, psychologists, guidance counselors, because it almost sounds like they're all the same thing and they do the same thing. They do something very different. If we think a child is going to self-harm, we bring in the psychologist or the social worker, and the guidance counselor will alert. And typically a teacher would alert the guidance counselor, who would then, if it's a self-harm thing, would alert our social worker, our psychologist. And so we're all going to work in tandem to make sure our students are safe, but also give them the supports. And that could be the tech counseling or the clubs. We also had a grant that's not ESSER, but a separate grant that we wrote for clubs this year. And the grant was really to engage our middle school and high school students. So it just focused on middle school and high school, and how can we get students in school and just participating again? Because in September, when they walked in the door, they didn't, they were different than they had been in the past due to COVID and due to everything. And so we have the grant. It has been running. We didn't run as many clubs as we had anticipated, but we also absolutely did not anticipate the surge that we were going to have. So, but with the surge and with the year then as crazy as it has, we've been able to run clubs like, say, we have the environmental club, the cooking club, sewing club, self-defense, fitness analytics, creative writing, foosball, robotics, archery, disc golf, Spanish club, math club, ping pong, and a bunch more. So we have definitely had a smattering of clubs, and it's something that we would like to extend in refine for next year, and just keep having our students come into school but want to stay. I want to stay after school and play foosball or archery or whatever it may be. And that's in addition to, obviously, we have all of our sports and our music program, and we do have so many other things happening. But we want to see our schools vibrant again in the afternoons and evenings. It's starting, but we still have a ways to go. Any questions about ESSER 2 or ESSER 3 in general, or the application?
You put it out for 3 applications?
So it's 3
And you've
applications.
been approved on all 3.
Yes.
How big is the bucket then?
So, well, that gets bigger and bigger, right? So it started, do you want to hear generally what the ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3 is? So ESSER 1 was the first round of funding, and that was $182,000. And we spent the entire $182,000, and that was in spring of 2020 on Chromebooks, because we had suddenly closed down and, we're doing online. So that was just basically one item that we bought. Then ESSER 2 was $677,000. And that is what we are literally spending this year. We don't have to spend it by the end of the year. So ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 are most likely going to be running simultaneously, depending on, I know Lisa wants me to close it out, but it's not going to be all closed out, depending on, the initiatives. And so when I look at our ESSER 2, that was $677,000. And the bigger things that we did was we had summer programming last year that we offered to students. We've had a variety of tutoring options this year, not as many as that we wanted, but we have been doing tutoring options and programs this year. Our substitutes, including our building-based subs, were paid out of ESSER 2 this year, and they are literally the only reason we were able to stay open during the surge, because there were days that our teachers either had COVID or had to quarantine because their family members had it, the mess of it all. So our building-based subs were a savior and let us stay open. We also upgraded some technology, like our switch replacements. Not 100% sure what that means, but Mr. St. Jean tells me all the time, like, what is it? The switch replacement
Don't
at the
worry
high
about
school?
it. It's impressive.
Apparently we needed, Adam really wanted it, so.
We needed it, and
And
not
wanted it,
only
yeah.
did we get it through ESSER, but we got 40% off through a federal piece. And so I don't want to say double dipping.
It
It
wasn't,
was all
no, it
legitimate,
wasn't.
but it was a brilliant financial organizational of this.
Yes, and our switches,
May I ask, what
Yeah.
percentage of this ESSER, et cetera, went for the updating with everything else, the cleaning, general maintenance of our buildings?
well, I'm looking at,
Percentage wise,
So in the first round, the Department of Ed did put in percentages for summer programs, cleaning, ventilation and cleaning, and academic. We balanced it. It was like 30, 30, 30. It was pretty even pies.
And the head of what? Building engineering.
So I'll
Mississippi
tell you
had a-
something
had to
terrible.
say with that?
Yes, I'll tell you something terrible.
Bring it on.
I'm bringing it on. There were some districts that used a great portion of their first round of ESSER funds to hire additional custodial staff. I know one district in particular brought on 30 additional custodians for cleaning. We didn't do that because Mr. Seepy put in a lot of protocols. Our guys and ladies did all of the extra cleaning. We did not use ESSER funds for that. We spent it on kids instead. So
I would like, Mississippi, will you stand up for a moment, please?
come to the podium, Mr. Seepy.
The original question that I was
Okay.
getting at was,
Yeah.
was wondering the total, and I'm
And
assuming it's.
The
gonna
last
be
one was
that-
1.5 million.
Okay, so we've gotten $2 million from ESSER to supplement, not to supplant our budget. This
Correct.
is all extra stuff, and that was what I'm trying to get at, is that all of these things were
In
above and
addition.
beyond what we're already funding. We're not taking that money
Yeah.
and using it to bury it into the budget. It's above and beyond that, for extra programs.
Yes, and so a perfect example of that is if we said we wanted to take like $80,000 and we wanted to pay, get a student assistance counselor. But then we took $80,000 out of our budget because we're getting this 80, but we have to get rid of a guidance counselor. So now that $80,000 just pays for the guidance counselor that we already have. So that would be supplanting. That means like the kids ended up with no extra.
Right.
So supplement is basically you have your budget and this is in addition to that, correct? And so that's the intent, the funds are intended to supplement our budget and to close the gaps for COVID and to support our students academically and socially and emotionally.
Most of the grants that you get above and beyond ESSER, Title II, and then some of those other things, they're all supplanting. They're not supplanting our budget, they're supplementing our budget.
Or enhancing one of the other.
So the grants that I get.
The other grants,
the-
above and beyond ESSER, I know that we apply for a number of different things.
Right, so those are mostly supplementing our budget. It's not.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, 100%. And there's some, yeah, every grant has different rules, but you are correct.
Ms. Arnold, I'd like to just point out, if we discuss nothing else tonight, it was worth coming just to hear what we've been talking about for the last 2 minutes. You are a huge asset. Don't let her get away, I'll tell you that right.
I've told her many times. And yeah,
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I'm very blessed to be here. I'm working on music, so
We are
thank
blessed
you.
with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And just, Mr. President, and Ms. Arnold, all of these expenses are on the website.
They are. So we have spreadsheets on the website and it's tricky. It's like you never want to put your spreadsheets on the website, not because you don't want to be transparent, but because when it's grant funds, they change. And so when you think like it was, we applied for the funds, we got approval, but there'll be an amendment process because we can't possibly 100% predict that we need a math intervention two years from now. Maybe we're so amazing, we don't need it and we want to, focus on more reading intervention or something. So our needs could change and we want to use data to have our needs change and there will be an amendment period. And during that amendment period, maybe we thought the math interventionist was going to cost, $60,000, but it cost $80,000. So maybe that math interventionist was a newer teacher, it cost $40,000. So like you're constantly juggling that. And so we get to amend and then we get to look at where we are. And, we thought the digital sign was going to be this much and it's more or less or something. So think of it as definitely a starting point, and we will update it as we go along and we will amend that. But we have to go through that same process with Department of Ed. So we have to write it, they give us feed, they send it back, they ask questions, they ask for more research. I throw all the research I know at them, they prove right away. So it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. But we will be able to amend, and I would typically at most school committee meetings bring up ESSER, say where we are, what we're doing with it, and just get some feedback. That makes sense?
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
You're not getting away with it.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Don't do that to
we
Alan.
still have to
I think
embarrass
the old
Alan,
brain's
so
still there.
Thank you.
thank you, Claire.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd just like to say something, well, Mr. CP comes up. So one of the things that was brought up was the mental health of the students, and I know that there were a lot of things that obviously have taken place over the last couple of years. In being new to this role for a couple of years now, I find quite honestly that people will come to me with their questions, their issues, things that are of concern of theirs. And in two separate instances, I had two parents come to me, one in the elementary school and one in the middle school, and they were concerned. They didn't know if there would be resources in regards to mental health with their student coming out, really over the last couple of weeks or so when the mask mandate was lifted. And in both those instances, I actually thought that they might have talked to each other, but they didn't. And in both of those instances, their child was using the mask as a protection mechanism as opposed to a health safety measure. And in both of those instances, they were a bit concerned that there wouldn't be mental health resources for their child in the school, in the sense where, obviously there was an email that went out a couple weeks ago to all of the parents stating, be respectful if there's a child wearing a mask, which I 100% agree. But I guess my question is, how does that gray over the area of the child knowing that mask or not, they're in a safe environment? And so I guess the message behind that is, does the school, are you even aware that that could be a possibility of some students? And how is the school, I guess, either maybe you haven't thought about that, but what is the school doing from a mental health standpoint to accommodate or look for those types of students that says, hey, you are safe in this school, mask or no mask?
So I'm seeing Jen Dano shifting around, and yes, very much,
Yeah,
yes.
so social services at the elementary level is critical. So in answer to your question, Rachel and I, as well as probably 7 staff members, are outside on a daily basis greeting all of our students. So we know the students who still have masks and that are choosing to wear them for reasons because they don't sometimes want to interact with their peers. We know that that's happening. We have children with compromised immune systems, so we respect that. And I have to say that we are diligent about knowing our students. So there's no cracks as much as we try to. There are no cracks. We have daily conversations with our social services department every Friday at 10:30. We have an open meeting where we sit down and we do nothing but talk about kids on our radar, kids that might be having issues, kids that we're hearing about, and it's just to get more eyes on kids and more adults involved in that child's life. So absolutely, parents get emails from us every Sunday at 7 o'clock with an outline of the week, in addition to contact information with anybody from the school. So we are very, very in tune with our families, or at least we try to be. We are very open to having conversations with our families. So in terms of the mask, I think we are down to a very small handful of children. And even when the transition was made to no masks, every child that got out of the car, if they had a mask or not, it was, we are so happy you're here today. And there was nothing about smiles. There was nothing, we did not want to hold, Mike had asked if we were gonna hold a mask-free party, because some PTOs around the state were doing that, and we refused to. We were not gonna put any child in any type of situation to make them uncomfortable. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
At the elementary level, especially, so. I did want to add, Claire, if that's okay. We are also looking to purchase a new social emotional learning program, and that decision probably will be presented to the school committee at the next. So
Are they having anybody looking it over, parents or?
So right now, we
Come to the mic.
oh, sorry, I tried to use my big teacher voice. So we, as a committee, as a district first, are going to be trying to figure out what we want, because there's a variety of them out there. We necessarily may not want to use something that is created for an urban environment for North Smithfield. So we're first going to identify what our needs are. Then we are going to identify what curriculums we want, and then we'll put forward a couple of them that can start to be set.
Will parents some parents be invited to this?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Right now, there's like something like 200 SEL programs to pick from. So we are going to identify as a school community first, and then absolutely reach out to parents and our students. And we're hoping for it to be a K through 12 initiative. That can be a little tricky because most of the programs are K through 8th grade.
Mr. Seepy, would you step forward, please?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you remember, the first time I met you, you were sitting with the other candidates during the summer, having lunch, and I said, oh, what are you? Another, janitor, I said, welcome, and they're looking at me laughing. No, that's all. I said, wow, I even like it better sitting with you, not a problem with you, and they all laughed. Well, Jean, you've been around almost as much. Since the 70s, our kids have been on this. And we've seen the worst of days in schools, and I think we've ended the best. I have never seen facilities because teachers were cleaning their own at one time. Painting, cleaning, cutting grass, you name it. In the condition they are now. And you're not bringing extra cleaning crews, your time. I can remember the front of this building was awful. A lot of us threatened to come on a weekend and fix it up. I thank you. I thank your leadership. Because if you weren't good, the men wouldn't be extending themselves. Because we have janitors that are talented in many different areas. And even principals that can do many wonderful things with a hammer and nail. And they're using everyone. Mr. McGee left me all the time. Yeah, listen, all the McGee's are talented. What can I say? But it's wonderful to come in. The children notice it, they're proud of it. And Jean, you've had to see. I even look at windows. Oh my God. Your leadership has been outstanding tonight. As a taxpayer and students, grandchildren are here now, and my own children went through the system. I wish you would have started like when it. You would have been a.
You know what, Mrs. O'Hara? The students enjoy coming to school, and they take pride in their clean buildings. The teachers enjoy it, and you know what? The custodians take pride in their buildings now too, and that's the biggest change that I see. The people that don't know, I
Yeah.
sat on that side for 15 years and fought that fight, and that one man has made a huge change in the condition of these buildings.
Well said.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Anybody else on the council or on the school committee have any questions or comments?
All right, I just had a couple other questions, segueing Mr. Seepy, and I'd like to address the school committee on this. But the outdoor track and field, it's been kind of ambiguous and kind of the buzz around town as far as residential use, rental use for revenue purposes, and maintenance of the turf. In addition to that, as we know that the concession stand, our goal as a council is to get that moving relatively soon, sometime this month. And one of the questions that came up in the last town council meeting was having access to the existing concession stand, essentially as needed.
I spoke to Mr. CP about that. The concession stand is all cleaned out and ready for demolition.
Okay. So that's that. As far as the track, maybe you could just spend a few minutes to kind of go over those concerns that we hear as far as town use. I know just driving here today, there were still blocks on the parking lot for kids to use the basketball courts. And although I understand you can park down here and just walk up, I think the message it just sends, especially on a day like today when it was in the mid-60s, to have padlocks on our gates.
Well, the gates are open. Open it Monday, I think.
Wait.
Yep.
Clean up the snack bar. The demolition contractor was supposed to be here sometime the first week of March. We decided to keep the parking lot closed. We just had a final inspection on the track on Friday. That's why the gates were closed for the track, because we needed the punch list. We got that from the architect. There were a few items that we didn't want to open up the field, the track until we had the punch list done. So we couldn't have, pointing the finger as far as who damaged what. But the gates were opened up today. The parking lot gates, I can open them up, but we wanted to keep them closed because, like, from what I understood, the concession stand would be under construction by now, or the demolition. But the gates are open. Did that today because we had construction on Friday.
And that actually leads into a larger discussion of the use of the track in the field. Because on one level, we actually just approved an RFP to extend our track and field program by adding several different throwing areas, which we weren't able to do a lot of the home games because we didn't have the place for the discus and the shot. And now we're looking at getting prices to do that. But we're kind of also in a position where we're getting a lot of conflicting asks about this area. So one of the things that we've done, and Mr. CP and Mr. Tech have met with some folks, and they put together an RFP for a field manager, a consultant because here's the thing. We know, first of all, we have a great field that's in place right now. Along with that field comes new equipment for grooming, training for our maintenance staff to do the required maintenance of it, along with multiple inspection periods. So this track will be in the field, will be inspected and groomed and maintained. If everything is done well, we could get 15 years out of this right now. But then we have the things that we're trying to balance. We want, first of all, our students to have full access to the field, the track, everything, all day. And honestly, it's just about every night during the seasons, it's full. We want the public to have access to it. But we also run into issues, especially on the weekends, where there's a lot of litter left behind, where lacrosse nets are locked up for the weekend because nobody's playing lacrosse. And then we have people who come in, they jump the fences, they bring bolt cutters, they cut the locks off of it, they pull the nets out into the field, and they're practicing. They come from other communities. They did not file a permit. They did not look for for permission. They didn't rent it. We've had situations in which the very expensive grooming equipment that was delivered was put into a parking space in the upper lot. There was an event there, and it was graduation. We opened it up, new field. Oh, for Thanksgiving Day. And a dad and his son decided they wanted the parking spot, so they got out of the truck and they threw all of the grooming equipment into the woods. So we have an issue of, we want to open it, but we also want to preserve it so it looks pristine and is there for a long time. We have questions about pricing. This is one of the reasons why we're looking to bring the consultant in. Are we charging a fair amount to use this? We do have a reduced rate for town athletics, all right, town leagues. But we also have a lot of town leagues that they don't want to pay anything. And so there's this constant, well, can you work with us on the price? We also have adult leagues from Massachusetts, from around, who would like to pay top dollar to use it. All right. But when they come in, we're talking a different type of crowd. We're talking, much more wear and tear on the facilities. Our questions about the bathrooms, who cleans them? I'm assuming we do. Are these bathrooms open during the weekend for anybody who wants to walk the track to go and to use the bathroom? I'm not as concerned about the ladies' side, the women's side, but men are pigs. And I worry about what the men's side is going to look like after it's opened up over a number of weekends or unsupervised. And then even with the concession stand, who's running it? Where do those proceeds go? Because we've talked about it. We would like very much not to charge a gate fee for students and families to come to a home game, right? Can the concession stand pick up the fees? So we're in a position where there's people saying that you need to earn, this thing needs to generate $100,000 a year in order to pay for it to be replaced in 10 years. All right. We can turn this into a money-making revenue enterprise, all right? But then the more we rent it, the more wear and tear on the field, the less it's open for the public to use. So essentially, we have a lot of questions around this. Step number one, we're working on getting somebody who manages these fields. All right. For example, I would like very much to have all of our schedules online. So I can go, I live in town, I can go take a look at, see what's going on at the track. And, oh, there's no games. It's open for public use. I can go down there. Because we also run into situations in which, his fault, that we have a game starting up, kids are coming in, and the coach would go over to some folks walking the track and saying, sorry, you have to leave. We have games starting up at 4 o'clock. I'm a taxpayer. I'm not moving. Or, yeah, I'll go. They call him. He calls me. I don't want to keep talking to him. So, what we would, in a very, only in this area, but just basically so that everybody understands the priorities are set. And, we can all share this amazing resource that we have.
Do you have cameras up there yet?
No, we've looked into pricing them. But yes, that's another thing, is to get security cameras out there.
They'll pay for this themselves, really.
You know, people have to look at this. To give everyone an update, most people know I was there, I sat on that site for 15 years. I was very instrumental in getting the first field in the track put in there. We didn't have a track program at the time. We didn't have a lacrosse program at the time. We had football and soccer. And it was still worth the investment to put that field in because it was like creating 3 fields. And we lit it and everything, and people could use the track to walk on. Now we have a vibrant track program that I heard earlier tonight is expanding. And so we need to stop and look at this as this is a school facility now, no different than the buildings here. They're not open 24 hours a day for the public to use. They're here for the students to use and that stuff. We do open the buildings up at night to residents of the town for different programs and whatnot. They do that. And so you could do that, but to look at this as a money-making thing, I'm not in favor of it. Because unless you charge exorbitant fees, it's a losing game. It's a lose-lose. Because your field is wearing out, your maintenance guys can't take care of it because it's constantly being used. The last field that was up there, I gotta be honest with you. 4 years ago, when I first got on the council and you were talking about replacing it, I went up there because I hadn't been up there in a while. And I'm not joking, but remember that old commercial on TV with the Indian with the litter crying? That's what I felt like. Because to see the condition of the track, because it had been misused by our own teams and coaches, and it hadn't been maintained and it hadn't been groomed, the field hadn't been groomed, where you could tell where all the play was on it and stuff. And gum on the track and trash all over the place. And I was like, and they want a new field. And so until we get our arms around this thing of how we're gonna maintain it and keep it in that condition and make people responsible for it, even our own coaches. That if the football coach is up there and the kids are crossing the track without the mat down, shame on him. And if we keep allowing it, then shame on us, because it's not helping us. And we did set up a sinking fund back then as revenues were coming in so that we could eventually replace it. We all know what happened with that. Different councils, different school committees, and it got swept and it got moved. The same thing could happen if we set up something now. We have no control over that. A new council can come in 5 years and say, nope, we need this for something else. We're gonna change the ordinance, we're gonna change the program or whatever, take it out, put it back into the budget. So going down that road, I'm not really a big supporter of it. To let outside groups come and use it. We want to keep a facility just like our buildings here. We want to keep them in good shape. And the only way we can do that is by keeping them for ourselves. And you know, the students have first use at them. And then our youth groups have choice at them, or our residents have choice at them. But people have to understand that at 11 o'clock in the morning and you want to walk the track, and there's a gym class up there. So no, it's no different than going into the gym and shooting basketball while they're at gym class. It's just an extension of our buildings. And so from a certain time, it has to be shut off to the people. That's just the reality of it. You know, we can't just have the people say, well, I'm a taxpayer and I can use it whenever I want, because they don't use these buildings when they want. They don't go up to the town barn and get a truck and use it when they want. They don't have the policemen drive them around because, hey, I'm paying you and I'm paying for the car. I want to ride like a taxi. It doesn't work like that. And that sounds absurd, but that's really what it comes down to, is that people are saying, well, I'm a taxpayer and I get to use it. You get to use it, but there are limits to it. And so I can't tell you guys what to do. Yeah, I know your role. It's all yours. But my advice is to get a handle on this thing is in-house first. Get a handle on this thing in-house, in town. If you can see your way down the road somewhere, but if you want to have the state tournament here for indoor track or outdoor track, I should say, we need to preserve it for ourselves.
And I think Mr. Tech can speak to some of the challenges with scheduling and how heavily that area is used just by our students alone.
Yeah, so I'm glad we were bringing this all up, and that was one of the questions. It was a quandary that I found myself in coming into it was, what is the priority? Like what hierarchy? I'm bombarded every day with emails from either groups that want to rent it, is it available? Our own town groups are reaching out and saying, we have scheduled some soccer games on here. And I'm like, I don't have an answer yet for you because I don't know which order, what's the priority for this. The first thing was, and you illustrated it perfectly, Mr. Badney, was is that we did expand our sports programs. And I've made this known year after year after year that we offer a large amount of programs there. Very, very large, multiple opportunities for our kids here. But there's always a cost to that, not just a cost in dollars in a sense, but also time. And so when we put all these things, we said, okay, well, they're all gonna go to the facility. And so jokingly, I tell everybody, well, it's booked till 8:30 at night. It really is booked till 8:30 at night, Monday through Friday. Because if I have my 3 teams practicing, both girls across, boys across, and outdoor track, 2 hours apiece of their practice slots, and they start at 2:30, we're at 8:30 before you know it. So there is, and I hate saying this, but there is no public use Monday through Friday, because we open up the schools at 7:55 a.m. So roughly 5 a.m. to 7:55, give or take, would be public use time. So that's one of the concerns right there. And then you also have the fluctuation of games. So when you have it all booked at that point, then also you need to move. And now you're like, I gotta go on a Saturday. Well, we rented it out. I don't know where we're gonna put that game now. We're gonna bump somebody again. So, you know, the consideration for public use on the weekend, like you mentioned, I'm of the same opinion, and I'll offer my opinion tonight too, is that I believe it should go to the town residents and the youth of our town before renting out. We used the NSCS fields this fall when we had a construction and everything going on, and we put all of our soccer teams up there from the schools onto the town fields, and we did a number on them. We did a number on those fields, you know, the rain and the usage like that. The NSYC come back saying, hey, can you help us out in the spring here? Some of our fields are, I think we should, in your schedule, and see what we can do. And I feel like we shouldn't be fighting ourselves in the town about our shared facilities. I think it's kind of, I agree that if the committee wants to go and say we need to generate funds, well, then we have to make some tougher decisions here. And some of those tougher decisions are going to anger some people. And they really are. And I don't know if that's worth its price. Because obviously in the town, we want support. And we're gonna go forward and be asking for things down the line in the future. And I think if you keep saying, yeah, but we never let you on that field. And no, we kept saying no, that because that group is more important to get on the field. I don't know if that sets us up for a road of success down the line. And, you know, with the potential expansion of our programs and with that, I don't see more time opening up. I see less time opening up. And I think we're already on a limited sliver of time for people now. I'm just afraid of where this will go unless we get a real grip onto how we want to proceed this going forward. And so I'm going to second my echoes very fine, Mr. Badney. That's where I think we need to go, unless we are going to turn to a management group that can then manage that, because then you're going to need someone that can handle all the influxes of all those different entities asking for a piece of the pie, so to speak, and then have to move and respond and handle all of that. On a side note, I know one of the things that we were really talking about, myself and Alan, has been is that how do we preserve it? And I love the term that you're using right now, because I was here when the first term got put in, and I saw the deterioration over the line. You know, when we talk about misuse of it also, I mean, right here in the summertime, I couldn't tell you who's on that field. I know we have people that are doing private training and making money off the field because they're not even residents of the town. We have, you know, teams from like Moses Brown and stuff like that coming up here and just jumping onto our field and using it. Anyone who drives by and sees it empty runs and gets on it. And so it's going to be a lot to manage. That's something that has to be consideration. Just what amount of time that's been open already now? Already being trashed. Already got trash up there today. We're picking up bottles and going around. And that's not even fully open yet. That's just starting to open the gates and like that. And I don't know what entity it's coming from yet, because we haven't officially started spring practices yet. That's going to start next week. But I know that there was a soccer net that was thrown over onto that field. We didn't have a soccer net. They're up at NSCS there right now, so they're not our soccer nets. Someone came down and put a soccer net on the field and been using it. So this is kind of that avenue that we run up against, and we're going to really have to find a way to protect our asset up there and to make sure it's being safe. We don't want to be coming back in 7 years. That's what we feel that we can get 15 years or so out of it. So I think that that's kind of where I was off my opinion as athletic director, given the amount of sports programs we have just scholastically, not mind the town programs that we have as well.
You know, it's a definite investment that the community makes doing this. And it takes some pride in it that we were the first local school system to put in a field trip. Hendricken had one, LaSalle was putting one in, but we were the first public school to put in a field turf. Now you see Lincoln has it, Cumberland has it, and it's the way to go. It preserves you, you know, we have public drinking supplies up here, so we can't fertilize and water like we want to make a nice field. But you go and look at some of the other communities and the gates are locked. In fact, is Connolly Stadium in Providence? There's a security guard there on the weekends. You can't go on that field because Providence wants to protect it. Because anyone, you know, they jump on it. So in order to protect their investment, they have a security guard on the weekend. And I'm not saying to go that route. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that we need to find the right balance on this thing so that we're protecting our resource, just like we do our buildings.
So this was what I at least envisioned, and I thought the direction we were going into was that we were going to look and see what a professional management company was going to pay us. So first of all, obviously, schools have first priority, there's no doubt. The residents can walk the track. Anyone who's on that field, other than our teams gets a permit, and that's just permission to go on. And then they would rent it. Remember, it's a turf field. It's made to be used. One of the reasons why we went this route was to use the field. I know that we get approximately $50,000 a year in rentals. And we've been putting the money aside. My understanding is that $100,000 from a professional management company isn't out of the question under the scenario I just said. Schools, public, I assume at least some clubs, but they would rent it, and they would rent it for a lot of money. They would also have the concession stand. They would also advertise. It would also do a whole bunch of things that a management company can do that we can't. So again, I'm not saying that's the route we go, but I thought that we were at least going to put on an RFP to see what the numbers look like.
Which is what we
Okay.
have, what we've done, yeah.
So we're not, I don't want the council or the public to think that we're not doing anything. We're aware of what we need to do, and we're moving forward with that.
I mean, that's what Providence does that with the Civic Center. They have a management company oversee it and run it.
Right. But that's one option. I mean, obviously, there's other options.
We have to do something like that, otherwise it's gonna be junk. Let's face it.
Right.
So
And obviously, they'd maintain it and everything else.
2037, when another council, another school committee, maybe not another superintendent. I don't know. They're gonna be grateful that we put money aside today, you know, and we set something up. Otherwise, they're gonna find themselves in a situation where they got the way things are going, it'd be $2 million to replace
Right.
that turf in 15 years.
And I'm hoping in 15 years, we have at least $1 million put aside, at least,
Or at least,
if not $1.5 million.
you're gonna need all of that,
Right.
because it was $1 million now.
If you maintain it properly, your track will last far longer than this one did. That's where a lot of your expense was. Half that cost was replacing the track.
Yeah.
If you maintain your track properly, your track doesn't need to be changed, but the carpet does. That's the issue. We had to change both of them at the same time. Your track should last 25 to 30 years if you maintain it right. You can't be out there with bikes and strollers and whatnot and everything. and
Getting gum and seeds and.
Crossing the track with your cleats and all that stuff, that's what ruins it. If you use it properly, in some of these places, they even go to the point that if you want to walk on the track, you walk on the outside tracks, 5 and 6. You don't walk in 1, 2, 3, or 4. And it's posted all over the place. But they have people that supervise that too. Someone has to supervise the field.
Well, again, a private company would probably put
Right.
cameras up there and
Right.
different things and look at the schedule. I'm not getting paid, send the police over there to throw them out. You know what I mean? So it's,
Yeah.
there's a profit motive and everything else involved in it. So
It's a good
again,
option. It's a good option to look at.
yeah, let's just see what happens. And again, they might say, we'll give you $100,000, but the school, you know, so whatever, the clubs can't play on it or whatever it may be. That's not an option. We'll pay us the 80.
Mhm.
and we'll take the 20,000.
Yeah.
Again, it's not about making money, it's
Yeah.
about offsetting. our
Managing,
costs.
managing our assets.
Right.
And I don't think people realize today, especially in track and field, and I'd like to see a full track and field program for boys and girls. Because I know my grandchildren, and grades were decent, no scientists, but strong students. Astronomical scholarships. To schools where, who can afford 70,000 a year? And now students are going school to get their scholarships up. Blew my mind. And for some, it helps them select the schools that they otherwise may not want to go to. And it entices others to do better because they want to go, because they may have something like a good, strong lacrosse team, et cetera, local or out of state or whatever. Our kids are traveling further away all the time. And I think it's a big investment. And do the police patrol there? We're gonna have to get that set up.
They do. We do have signs up there that say, please take notice. And I've spoken with the captain. And no, actually,
At
they
least
have.
if we know it's gone.
They have, because during this period where the track hasn't been open, we did notify the police and say, look, if anyone's out there on the weekend or at night, it's not us. They don't belong there. And so they have.
And, we need signage by permit only, whatever signage we
Yeah.
need.
And that's,
And, I understand that, but then they can't say, oh, I didn't know. I
Right.
mean, no, I get
yeah,
it. I get it.
and just one thing in what you mentioned as far as scholarships, Mr. Tech told me that women's shot put,
Yeah.
that's where the money is.
Yeah.
And the hammer, shot put it, women's shot put and hammer, that's where the cash is, and that's why we're putting in shot and hammer throws.
All right, anybody else have anything, anything else I'd like to discuss or add to the conversation tonight?
Just before we leave, I think it should be noted that in the last 2 years, I know it's been really difficult on the school side of things. I mean, it's been difficult for everybody. But the superintendent and his staff have done a great job managing this whole issue with your support. Our support, I think, a little bit too, but mostly the superintendent and his staff. They did a phenomenal job handling this.
Thank you. We all agree to that. Thank you, Superintendent.
Anybody else?
And even though I said some negative things about the gentleman sitting to my right, we have,
I've never seen them so quiet.
we've exchanged cell phone numbers and he's there and again, it's just the communication and outreach and supporting each other has just been fantastic.
Thank you. I think Mr. Carver had a couple more things. you wanted to add.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming this evening, agreeing to meet, to go over these items that were kind of lingering or pressing. But just to echo what Mr. Vadney and Superintendent St. Jean said, the last couple of years during COVID, it has been difficult for us. Me in particular, being new to this role, it's a balancing act between, listening to your constituents, following through on what you may have run on. And one of the things that I wanted to make an effort when I did run was to continue that cohesiveness between the school committee and town council. And, obviously along with that, listening to your constituents and responding to them. Really what I'm saying is, whether it's constituents that voted for any one of us or constituents that voted for any one of you, neither element of constituents are greater than the next person. Okay. And what I mean by that is, just more advice that I would give is, this past November, as a new council member, I presented a resolution to town council on an item of resolution regarding TRIAP and some local comments that were made by the executive director, Tim Duffy. And although our town council tabled it, I was responding to constituents that expressed concern of mine. And no different than if constituents were expressing concerns to you. Now, I just happen to have taken a formal approach and drafted a resolution. Regardless, it didn't get passed, it got tabled. But I was very concerned with an editorial piece that Committee Member Jones wrote, and I don't know if any of the other four of you were involved or had participated in that. But I was concerned, one, because you signed it as a committee member, and here we are trying to work together cohesively, especially when it comes to budget time, where, the goal is to essentially work together, okay, for the betterment of the district. And I was quite honestly taken back, and although I can personally take the heat, the concern that I have is, as new people, as any of our seats become available in the future, what type of tone is that going to set for new people questioning whether or not they even want to fill a seat when situations like that are done? And again, whatever, it's fine. That was just a concern of mine, and I felt as though I personally needed to address it, and just, let you know that Stain Gene and I have had our colorful words. And, it's always been between him and I. And in fact, the last email exchange that him and I had, I ended off by saying, you know what, let's go grab a bourbon sometime.
You said a beer, I corrected you.
You did.
And I said a bourbon was more appropriate.
And I said, I take mine with ice, and he
And
said
then
something,
I
said something
said
colorful
that,
back.
something about being a lightweight.
Yes. Yes. But nonetheless, to me, that just shows an example of having your discrepancies with each other, but being able to handle it more appropriately. And quite honestly, I just didn't think that was appropriate. I don't know if you want to comment, but.
Mr. Corvo, my entire point about that editorial, which I do not apologize for, and I stand by it 100%.
Okay, but Mr. Jones, you.
Hold on,
you-
hold on,
you-
whoa, 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 I let you, no, wait,
you-
I
you-
sat here and
you-
let you speak.
excuse
Wait a
me,
second, Mr.
You
Corvo.
said it was I was an embarrassment
Yes,
to town council and the
Yep.
town.
I agree. Yes, I do. When you decided to hijack that meeting,
He did not hijack the meeting. At no
Wait a
time
second,
did he hijack the
wait a
meeting.
secet, Mr. President.
No,
I
listen,
sat here
he did
and
not
let
hijack
him
the
say what
meeting.
he had to say.
He followed all the protocols that we followed during the meetings. Mr. Corvo at no time hijacked the meeting.
What Mr. Corvo did
No, he did not.
is he took over that meeting with something that was completely inappropriate for what that meeting is for and what the town council is for. Yes, Mr. Corvo, I think you embarrassed yourself, and I think you embarrassed the town council, and I think you just did it again. You scheduled this meeting apparently to have a conversation with us about how we can work together on the budget. And now you just turned it into something that was a personal airing of grievances. Fine, that's fine. I stand by what I said. I think you have reinforced that fact. Trust me, sir. No one is reluctant to run for office in this town. People are very excited about the upcoming election, and especially about the town council seat that you're in right now. So I suppose I appreciate the fact that you waited for the end of this meeting to ambush me. But make no mistake, that's an ambush. What do you expect me to say? Thank you? No, and I'm certainly not going to apologize. You are exactly who I think you are.
I find it disheartening, Mr. Jones, that, when I was running, you and I met several times and we had very good conversation. And just because you happen to disagree with something that I do, for you to insinuate my actions, again, I can take the heat. but it speaks to your character, and I just think it's unfortunate. I don't hold the committee liable for that. I still put the school first, I still put the students first, and I still put the families first and the parents.
Mr. Corvo, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about what you've said, not said, either in private conversation, private emails, up at that podium, or here tonight. I just don't have the time for you, sir. You know, once again, the only person you've embarrassed in this room tonight is yourself. So if you'd like to continue this conversation, we absolutely can. We've wasted enough time out of these people. Happy to talk with you about it. But let me just say this. We did have a lot of conversations when you were running, and I was fooled. And that's on me. I thought that you were somebody different. You're not.
I am Mr. Jones, we're just the exact opposite.
Suppose that's true.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
We're gonna wrap- Does anybody else have anything to add to this? Ms. Mayor?
A little bit different, but Mr. Corvo, I was saddened by something that you said at the outset, where you said that people were coming to you. And I hope that you might pass them on to us and tell them to come and speak to us in the school committee, because I want people to know that we are here to work with them for their children. And that's very important to me. And we are very open to any input whatsoever. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo. When I had, and I did have several residents come to me expressing that concern, and that was my initial response to them. As I stated, when I was explaining the resolution to town council, I did let them know this was not a shoot from the hip, a first option for me. I weighed the options, I struggled. I think in light of the situation, they may not have felt comfortable. So again, I took a formal approach. Again, it didn't go anywhere. And, you know, quite honestly, I think it personally should have just been left there.
So please share with them that we're not scary. So
And, you know, in light of subsequent meetings, I think you had an opportunity to do that, and I think you did. So thank you.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments for the council?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
I will entertain a motion for from the council to adjourn this meeting. Do we have a motion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are closed.
Motion to adjourn. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to make, is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned.